Hello, my name is Waylon Cosner. Welcome to session 2, Perceptions and Culture. We're going to start out this week talking about web-based social cognition. Increases in technology has increased web-based social interaction. So the more in advance our technology gets, the more digitally we seem to interact with each other. Question would be, do we judge web-based first impressions differently than we do in the real world? In other words, are we looking for the same cues? Are we creating the same first impressions? According to our textbook, findings suggest that there is some consistency between first impressions formed in response to observations made in the real world and impressions based on information found on web pages. So yes, in fact, nonverbal facial expressivity is important, body cues, rate of speech, so on and so forth. What we have found too is that the less nonverbal cues that are available, the more important other cues become, either accurately or not. Um, an example of that would be, and also a danger would be that, say you're just texting with somebody and you've never met them, their spelling or their grammar or abbreviations may make you think that they are a certain way when they're not. They may just be in a hurry or a rush. So when you meet them in person, you would get a bigger, rounder picture by looking at the nonverbal cues. So the other cues are important, but we have to be careful not to mix them up. The various ways that we remember those conversations as well are different. The various items of information we use when perceiving others is organized into a coherent cognitive representation. This allows for easier retrieval. What this means is that we store it away in a very efficient manner to be able to retrieve it better. And that's how important that those first impressions are to us. Culture and our perceptions, how do they relate to each other? So, culture refers to the practices, customs, arts, religion, food, way of life, achievement, and failures of a particular social group. Culture is going to be very broad, like the American culture compared to the Russian culture or the Saudi Arabian culture, are very defined, like the South Beach culture compared to the Chinatown culture of San Francisco, which is a subculture of a larger culture, which would be the American culture. The culture we live in shapes our perceptions of the world, definitely. The very perceptions across culture on various different things and items. So our cultural perception and how we see the world is greatly impacted by the culture that we come from. What we eat, how we eat it, and when. Perfect example of this is we use Americans and meat and potatoes versus meat and potatoes with a fork and a knife. Whereas Japan, which is a very seafaring country, a lot of fish, a lot of rice, chopsticks. So all three of those are different just culturally. How we pray, when we pray, living in an Islamic state versus a open or Christian state, or even just an open state. How we dress, according to either weather, culture, religion, varies from the cultures that we are in. How we spend and make money, economic systems, democracy compared to, or sorry, capitalism compared to uh, socialism, communism, which is also a political state too. But I think you get where I'm going there. How we view foreigners, how we welcome foreigners, how we raise our children varies greatly amongst cultures and tribes and populations, and how we govern each other, and just our main governing body of either a uh, democracy like we have here, or socialist governments, dictatorships, monarchies, so on and so forth. All right, the two cultures that I chose to compare would be the American culture and the Saudi culture. I picked out some keynotes that I picked up during my research. The American culture, we have freedom of religion, whereas in the Saudi culture, they are Islam is the state religion and mandated by law. When it comes to their laws, they are under Islamic law, so much different than our equal rights that we have for everybody across the board. There are definitely different rights for different groups within the Saudi culture. Excuse me. Um, we are in a democracy, so we have a democracy type of mentality as we deal with things and voting and feeling like we're a part of things, whereas the Saudi culture is under a monarchy or rule of just the Saudi royal family. I don't even know if I'd call it a monarchy, more as a dictatorship. Um, we have freedom of press and information freedom of press, and the information is readily available to anybody that wants to find it. Whereas in the Saudi culture, the news and information is greatly restricted by the religion and state and the royal family. So there's not much going in and going out. So there's a huge difference there in culture and what we know about the outside world compared to the Saudi people. We speak English here. Very few people know Arabic, whereas in Saudi Arabia, they speak Arabic, but a lot of people know English. Um, Food wise, there's a lot of differences in what we eat, but the major one I saw was just in the proteins that we eat. We eat all meats across the board. In the United States, they're all readily available, whereas in Saudi Arabia, they eat mainly chicken and lamb. Beef is very rare there just because of the climate and the cost of importing, and pork is forbidden in the religion. So some of the surprises that I found while doing this research, found four. Women could not drive in Saudi Arabia until 2017. I knew that they were definitely oppressive towards women, but I didn't know it was only until 2 years ago that they could actually drive. They use the Islamic calendar, which is a lunar calendar, different days, number of days in the month. I didn't even know one existed. Their work week is Sunday through Thursday, where Friday is their holy day. And then it's followed by Saturday, which is also another day off, whereas we obviously are completely different, and our holy day is Sunday, preceded by a day off. And then one that I just saw as quirky and funny is that men and women do not greet each other in public unless they're from the same family. Um, so there's such a taboo about the men and women difference that unless you're related to a woman, you don't even greet her in public. So, as my perspective changed at all, most from the beginning of this until the end of the research, most of my pre-research perceptions are true about Saudi Arabia, except for that I thought that they were far more progressive than they actually are. I assumed that they were far more progressive because they were such a huge United States ally. I don't know why I thought this, but that was very unwise in thinking. The Saudi royal family runs the country by Sharia Islamic law. They have complete control over information coming and going from the country as well. Um, I have a greater respect what the common citizen must go through, especially anyone that is a minority or outcast, not Arabic and Islamic, not heterosexual. Uh, yeah, I mean, I knew that they were restrictive, but I had no idea that they were so already. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I thought because they had money. I'm not sure, but it was a misconclusion.